My name is Frank Bonada. Joining me today is Kyle Dimond. We are here to break down UFC 290, Volkanovski versus Rodriguez, a stacked card, an oasis in the dry desert that has been the UFC as of late. But I mean, what a card it is. Alex Volkanovski, one of the best all-time featherweight fighters. Yair Rodriguez, excellent action fighter. We also have a flyweight co-main event between Brandon Moreno and his longtime rival Alejandro Pantoja. Uh, Former champion Robert Whittaker is on the card as well. Brilliant card. First of all, Kyle, how are you? And what do you make of this whole card?
I'm doing good. It's fun to whenever we jump on these things, it means there's a big card coming up, so that's always exciting. Um, my excitement levels are kind of like a weird stage because International Fight Week, you usually have like a really big name attraction on there where you're like, oh wow, I can't believe that person's fighting again or something like that.
Mm.
But I also keep forgetting that like there's a couple of fighters on this card who are some of my favorite fighters in the UFC. And whilst on the fight weeks, I might not be like, oh, I can't wait for this fight. When I watch it, I'll be like, oh, I'm going to end up watching this fight 50 times over the next few months just because I love watching these guys compete. So there's a lot of that on this card where I'm like, this is going to be great. I'm not like counting down the minutes, but like you said, compared to some of the cards we've had in recent times, I
Mm.
will take this every day of the week.
Yeah. Well, I mean, notice how we didn't do a preview for UFC 289, which is Nunes versus Aldana. It's not a coincidence. Um, but yeah, stay on a positive note. Volkanovski, Rodriguez, uh, Yair has been brilliant since. I mean, ever since the loss to like Frankie Edgar, really. He's had a couple of weird fights in there. Jeremy Stevens, a
Yeah.
strange one, the Ortega injury. Um, but I mean, the performance against Max Holloway, even in a loss, I thought he looked sensational. Gave Holloway so much more uh, trouble than I expected. Obviously, Emmett was probably a career best performance from Yair. Just the kicks from range and then the killer instinct to lock up that triangle submission. On the other hand, you have Volkanovski, who I mean, pound for pound, possibly the best in the world. Obviously, people are going to say Jones and Makachev, but in terms of actual champions in their open weight classes, he is definitely one of the best right now, maybe of all time. The trilogy with Holloway, Ortega, I mean, that was an absolute war. The
Yeah.
beating he put on the Korean Zombie, even the performance he had against Makachev, again similar to Yair, even in a loss, he looked sensational. Um, it's a very fun fight. Um, I think obviously a lot of people are on the Volk side, but Yair, I mean, well, do you think Yair stands a chance in this one?
He definitely stands a chance. I think I've probably seen more people picking Yair than I thought would be the case. I do think because of Yair's style and the fact that Volk is coming off of the Makachev loss, even though he looked great, I just think maybe people have forgotten a little bit about how good Volkanovski is at featherweight. So I'm surprised actually by some of the takes that I've seen. But he definitely has a chance. He's so dangerous. Um, the problem that I see as a huge Jair Rodriguez fan is like if he's gonna come unstuck by any type of fighter, it's someone who's just solid at everything. Like, and I just look at Volk, and in my opinion, Volk is the best pound for pound fighter in the world right now, and I think he probably is one of the best ever. Like skill set wise, resume probably a little bit further to go before he's in that conversation, but like he's just so good at everything. And like not only just in terms of striking, grappling, like cardio is insane. His mindset going into each fight is crazy. His confidence and how calm he is. Like I know that people like kind of picked at it as like something he didn't do well in the Makachev fight when he's got his back taken and he's giving people a thumbs
Mm.
up and laughing and stuff. To me, it was just like usually this is a position where people freak out, and he is just he's so ready for it that he's not bothered. Like that's kind of what worries me if I was coming at this fight from a Rodriguez standpoint, is like if there's one fighter in the UFC who I don't think will be phased by his taekwondo techniques and his elbows, it's probably Volkanovski. Like I can just see him walking through it.
Yeah, I agree. Um, Yair has a lot of fun stuff in his arsenal
Yeah.
and dangerous stuff as well. And I think the one thing, that Volk really has to be careful of is the kicking game, of course, that was so effective against Emmett. Even his calf kicks. I think the body kick was the one that really stood out in the Emmett fight, but Yair's like low leg kicks really lethal, and obviously that's a big part of Volk's game as well. So I think that's going to be an interesting battle to watch play out. The one thing that I sort of think though is what's to stop Volk just banking up rounds by taking Yair down, pinning him against the side of the cage, landing ground and pound, sapping at his gas tank. I Holloway's the big sort of what put Holloway ahead of Yair in their fight, because they were going toe to toe in the striking realms, I think. What put him
Mm.
ahead was the fact that he could take him down at opportune moments, land some ground and pound, mix the fight up. And because that fight was really, really close. I think Volk's probably a better grappler wrestler than Holloway is. Obviously, there's a concern. Ortega started throwing up submissions from his back and nearly had him twice. I don't think Yair is as good a submission artist as Ortega, but you can't really do that in MMA. Like
Yeah.
it's circumstantial. You never know what situation it's going to be. But yeah, I think, like you say, Volk's well-roundedness, his not only is he a solid fighter, like in terms of technique, he just is solid, like physically solid. The man's a brick. So I think it's gonna be very fun. I think there's gonna be some really exciting exchanges. But overall, I see Volkanovski probably winning a unanimous decision victory.
Yeah, I could see him maybe stopping Yair late.
Yeah.
Kind of, I've rewatched the Brian Ortega fight the other day, and kind of like when you get to the end of that fourth round where he's just hitting
Mm.
him with so much that like the doctors are really close to stepping in, and you're like, if Ortega just ate a few more of those, the referee would probably step in. I can see maybe something like that, but yeah, I agree with everything you said. I'm just like I'm not a ridiculously good analyst. There's people that could probably look into this more, but I feel like I've seen more performances from Volkanovski where I was like his footwork compared to the other guy was like such a huge difference. And even without the wrestling, I could see it being a nightmare for Yair because he's just not going to give him any space. But you throw the wrestling in as well, and I think Volkanovski's grappling ability. I mean, maybe not after the Islam fight, but people probably know now, but Volkanovski's really good at
Mm.
grappling. So, yeah, I just he's a nightmare for Rodriguez, I think, which is it's a little bit of a shame because I do love watching the crazy style of Yair Rodriguez, but I just don't know how well it works against a guy that's as solid as Volk, like you said, in
Mm.
literally every single way.
Yeah, absolutely. But even though we're both on the Volk side, there's no guarantee that he's going to win. It really is not. When you have someone like Yair, so that's why sometimes you get fights where you almost go into it like it's a foregone conclusion, and I just don't get as interested in those sort of fights. This one, I feel very strongly that Volk is going to win, but I'm never going to count Yair out. He's the younger man, the more dynamic man, the probably the harder hitter. So yeah, for as long as it goes, or well, yeah, for the full extent of the fight, I'm going to be locked in. It's a brilliant matchup, and I can't wait to see it. Let's move on to the co-main event then. Brandon Moreno takes on Alejandro Pantoja for a third time, technically. Um, Obviously, I guess it'll probably be billed as Moreno versus Pantoja 2. One of their fights was on Tough, I believe. But Pantoja won both their first two fights, which is a very interesting caveat to this matchup. Obviously, Moreno has been on this had this incredible 4-fight series with Davison Figueiredo in the mix as well. He also stopped Kai Kara France, which yeah, I think is a very impressive scalp to have on your resume. Pantoja has been lobbying for a title for a long time, it feels like. But the last three wins, Manel Cap, Brandon Royval, and Alex Perez, three very solid wins, finally got him a shot at the belt. How do you think this one goes then, mate? Obviously, Pantoja's got the wins, the history, but he's the older man. Moreno has developed a lot, I think. It's yeah, a fascinating fight. How does it go?
I find this one so difficult to call.
Mm.
Every time I manage to convince myself of like Brandon Moreno is so much better than the previous times they fought. And I don't know if I would say Pantoja is as improved in that time. Pantoja is just so scary. Like he has that like fear factor that Figueiredo had in all the fights with Moreno, where you're like, I think Moreno's probably a better technical fighter, but Figueiredo can end a fight in a second, and so can Pantoja. That's the worry I think for Moreno is this is another Figueiredo situation where he kind of needs to be perfect in order to win. I say that obviously he finished Figueiredo on two occasions, so kind of got my viewpoint wrong at least on that. But like I would lean towards Moreno because I feel a bit like safer in betting for someone that is probably better technically and I think has the fight IQ at this point to avoid some of those traps that Pantoja's caught him with in the past. Um, like personally, I just feel like that makes more sense than going for the guy that is probably going to be banking on a finish. But like it's like 55-45. I don't know if you're the same as me, but like I could see this going literally any way. Like Pantoja decision, Moreno decision, submissions for either, like all bets
Yeah,
are off.
I think I am on the same sort of wavelength with you. I like I sort of said before, I think the evolution of Moreno's game forces me to pick him in this
Mm.
fight because he's very much a different fighter to who he was when he last fought Pantoja. Um, but I mean, yeah, Pantoja. I think the similarities to or the comparison to Figgy is very apt. I saw someone, I think it was Conor Rebush from Bloody Elbow, saying Pantoja fought Figgy in a Figgy fight and still nearly beat him. You know, he went and fought Figueiredo's game and, you know, came within like, you know, the slightest margins of losing that fight. So he is someone who can go out there and put it on Moreno. And the thing with Moreno, when he's fighting technical, especially with the skill set that he has now, he is sensational. He's maybe not unbeatable, but he's a world beater. He's someone who can beat anyone in that division, but he will get drawn into a brawl. He has that sort of that Mexican pride. And I think if Pantoja can draw that out of him, that's when the fight, I mean, it really goes into no man's land. You have no idea who's going to come out on top in that sort of scenario. So I have to go for Moreno, but yeah, Pantoja. It, it's one that like I think probably every round of the fight, my perception of it is going to change. So
Yeah.
going into it, I'm saying Moreno. After 5 minutes, it might be a completely different look on this fight.
Yeah, I think the difficult thing is we've seen Moreno and Figueiredo fight each other four times. And so from the like outlook, you go, oh, those two guys are clearly the best
Mm.
flyweights in the division. Then you've got everyone else. But meanwhile, Pantoja was beating all these other guys, and like you said, when he fought Figueiredo, kind of like matching them at their own games and doing it better than them in some cases. It's like I because I've seen Moreno and Figueiredo have these incredibly high level fights, and four of them. It's like, is there really another flyweight that's as good as them? Because I haven't seen him fight either in some time now. So that's the only thing that's kind of holding me back a little
Mm.
bit about Pantoja and why I'm like, oh, Moreno has been looking better than ever. Um, and yeah, like you said, the improvements he's made are absolutely incredible. The one other worry I have is I think Brandon Moreno, maybe if any fighter in the UFC, is the most like kind of, he relies on confidence a lot. That you could see it in the Figueiredo fights, how that changed in between them.
Yeah.
And that kind of worries me a little bit, like because of Pantoja beating him in those two previous fights. But how much can you look at those, because he was such a different fighter back then. I
Yeah.
feel like he's grown so much, like not only skill set but confidence wise as well. So yeah, I'm leaning towards Moreno just because I think he has a better skill set. If it goes technique for technique, I think he's good enough to not get submitted like he did the last time. They did get submitted last time, right?
Uh,
Did it go to a
I'd
decision?
have to go back. Yeah, because I think that was the tough one, a submission.
The tough one was a submission. Maybe that's why.
Yeah.
Yeah. The last one was a decision. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm leaning slightly towards Brandon Moreno. But the whole time watching it, I'm going to be like, oh my god, he's going to get submitted or knocked out at any
Yeah.
minute.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're pretty much on the same boat for that one. Very close fight. But one fight that, at least for me, I mean, I only see it going one way. Robert Whittaker versus Dricus du Plessis. Um, I I've seen some people saying, "Oh no, this is du Plessis's time. It's time of DDP. He's got knockout power. He's got his nose fixed. He now has 100% oxygen inhalation." No, Robert Whittaker is going to go in there and he's going to do what he wants to du Plessis. I I can't remember what the betting line was. It must be like minus 385 on Tapology. Rightly so. It should probably be more than that, in my opinion. I think unless Whittaker has something's happened behind the scenes, he's coming to the fight with a torn ACL and a fractured nose. I don't know, something like that has as so catastrophic. Like TJ Dillashaw versus Aljo. It'd have to be something like that
Right.
for Whittaker to lose this fight, in my opinion. Um, I rate him so highly. I think his skill set is that which could cope with anyone in the division. And we've seen that even Adesanya, his last fight was competitive. I don't really agree with people saying that Whittaker won the fight, but he definitely won rounds in there. He had success against the best middleweight on the planet. Yeah, especially like maybe if it was like a Hamzat or someone like that whose wrestling is so elite that they could cause him issues in that and those sort of semblance of the game. But I mean, du Plessis is going to go in, he's going to strike with Whittaker. There's big, wide looping shots, and I think Rob's just going to hit him down the pipe, just ping him repeatedly, maybe throw in some of his own takedowns to mix things up. Jab his face out, force him to dip into that sort of swinging kick. He might not knock out Dricus because Dricus is weirdly durable. And he has that second wind that always comes in about like 7.5 minutes in. But I mean, yeah, Rob KO, Rob decision. That's the only way I see it going.
Yeah, I would love to be able to sit here and make a case for, try and play devil's advocate and make a case for Dricus du Plessis, but like, I can talk from experience. I can only breathe out of one side of my nose. If I got it fixed, I wouldn't suddenly turn into the best middleweight in the world. Like, I keep thinking maybe I'm missing something. And then I think about the Till and Brunson wins, which his two best
Yeah.
wins, and I'm like, I think about the way that he had Till up against the cage, just hitting him for like a solid round. That was a strange fight. And then beating Derek Brunson. I've seen Derek Brunson beat himself way too many times to like give that too much stock. I'm just like, yeah, I'm doing the same thing as you, where I'm like, every single time I think of what's Dricus du Plessis going to do, he's going to stand with Robert Whittaker. That's not a good idea. Like, I can't see. Was a big fan of Darren Till whilst he was still in the UFC, and he lit Dricus du Plessis up in that second round before
Yeah.
losing the fight in the third. Like you said, around the 7 minute mark when that maybe that needs to be a new mythical fight. If he beats Robert Whittaker, that's a new mythical fighter. Dricus du Plessis after the 7th minute. Like I don't I'm sure he's a nice guy, but like I don't know if he wins. I don't know if there's ever been a bigger talent like difference
Yeah.
between someone who has won a fight and someone who has lost a fight. Like, and I can't believe that we're saying that in a number one contenders eliminator fight. Like that is insane to be saying. I feel like this should have been Sean Strickland and and the guy that Strickland fought should have been fighting Dricus
Yeah.
du Plessis. Like,
Yeah, absolutely. And I probably still would have picked Avis Magomedov to beat. Nah.
no, you might be right. I'd have to give it some thought.
Yeah, it's a strange one. But I mean, again, like the main event, I dare say it'll be fun.
Oh,
Duplessis,
it's like of all the fights, apart from the title fights, its spot right before the title fights is perfect because in MMA, you've always got to consider the what if he wins and
yeah.
I don't watch it. Like we're sat here
uh,
laughing about the chances of him winning, and
I
it could
know,
happen.
I know. I mean, yeah, it's just going to be a spectacle. It's kind of like a repeating motif on this card. Like you look further down, like Bo Nickel and JDM, Tyra, people matched up with people that really they should have no problem putting away. But what if? What if? That's the beautiful thing about this sport. Yeah, it's never a 100% guarantee. But yeah, I think Robert Whittaker is definitely going to come out on top, and I guess fight Izzy once again for a third time. Will he win? Probably not, but I'll watch it. And last time there were market improvements. Maybe he'll finally do enough to beat Izzy. Um, but yeah, I think that's all that needs to be said for that fight. So the last fight we're going to talk about today is Dan Hooker taking on Jalen Turner, two top 15 ranked lightweights, one of the top divisions in the UFC, probably my favorite, I think. Obviously, bantamweight's the one that people always go to, but lightweight, I think just some of the guys in there are just. I rewatched Hooker versus Poirier recently. There's like a UFC fight back or a flashback series on Fight Pass, and they did one for Hooker versus Poirier. That's just, yeah, that fight, even in the Apex Arena, really was something else. Though a lot of people are saying that Hooker really left a piece of himself in that cage, that octagon that night. So yeah, well, I mean, obviously since then, losses to Chandler, Makachev, and Arnold Allen. I mean, there's no shame in those losses, but they were all finishes. Especially considering Hooker used to be known for his durability. That's a little bit of a concern. Two wins in that period were Nasrat Haqparast and Claudio Puelles, both fighters who, there's a reason why they weren't in the top 15. Both good skill sets, but Hooker made it very apparent why there is a rankings. Jalen Turner is the guy that everyone's hot on. Huge lightweight. Was on a really good winning streak before coming up short in a split decision loss to Matthias Gamrot. No shame in that. Gamrot is made it very clear that he is an elite lightweight, and the fight was very close. How do you see this one going?
I'm really excited for this one. I'm not entirely sure what to expect from this one because Jalen Turner, kind of the only time we've seen him tested at like a super high level was Gamrot, and that was a really close fight. Like
Yep.
Gamrot did edge it in my opinion, but it was only like it was because he was like his output with his takedowns is crazy, which it always is. That's Gamrot's
Yeah.
whole thing. So it was like, okay, I don't really know how much I can judge Jalen Turner from that. He got taken down a lot by a guy who takes people down a lot. And with Dan Hooker, it's like, but you said the two wins that I thought he looked great against Claudio Puelles and he had the win over Hapras, but it's like, well, he should be beating guys like that,
Yeah.
to be honest, if we're gonna still hold him in the like top 10 even. And then the losses he got stopped by Chandler, who landed a really good shot, and
Yeah.
submitted by Makachev, and then went down and lost to Arnold Allen, which never seemed like a good idea in the first place.
Yeah.
So it's like I have no idea where either of these guys are currently at. I think I would lean slightly more towards Jalen Turner just because I thought he looked so good on the feet against Gamrot, and I don't see Dan Hooker being able to do that. Like Gamrot had a difficult time getting him down and keeping him there, and I rate Gamrot so highly. So I can't see Hooker being able to do that, and I think he just might get. I think the range. I don't know what the exact stats are, but like you said, Jalen Turner, like Dan Hooker's quite a lengthy lightweight, but I think Turner will still have the reach on him, and I
Well,
just think he's going to find that difficult.
according to Tapology, they have the same reach, although Hooker is 6 foot and Turner is 6'3". They both have a 75.5-inch reach. So it's
Yeah,
interesting.
there's the height that
Yeah.
is going to be the biggest thing, though, isn't it? Like, yeah, I feel like Jalen Turner does a lot of the same things that Dan Hooker does well.
Stepping
Um,
knees and yeah.
yeah, and like just wrapping up opportunistic submissions and things like that. Yeah, he does a lot of the same things well. And if you were going to ask me right now who is in a position to deliver a better performance, I would say Jalen Turner, but I've been wrong about Dan Hooker in the past about how high his potential maybe is. So I'm really split on this one. I don't know if you feel the same, but like, yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like whoever just turns up on the night is going to take this.
I'm really split. I mean, Hooker is a fighter that I'm a big fan of, actually. I have been for quite a long time. But I think Turner rightly is the favorite. He's younger, he's bigger. He has a similar style, but maybe slightly more physicality to his game.
Yeah.
I think it could be close. Some people are saying Turner's going to dominate and run through Hooker. I don't think that's going to be the case. Unless it is, unless he catches him with that perfect shot that like Chandler did. But I think most likely the fight's going to play out a back and forth game that I think the two of them are going to try their different game plans on each other and a lot of improvising in the moment. Like I say, in terms of just raw, like I guess stats. Look at them. I imagine Turner has those advantages, but Hooker's got that elite CKB team. The game plan is going to be there. The ability to adapt in the moment is going to be there. Yeah, it's a fascinating fight. Really interesting bout that sort of. I know it's not the last fight in the main card, or the opening fight. There's the Bo Nickel one that we're not going to talk about, but it rounds out a really nice main card to UFC 290. I think we'll wrap up there then. That's the 4 fights that really matter on that main card. Like you said, Bo Nickel taking on a short nosed opponent. It's not really much point going over that. But thank you very much for coming on, Kyle. Appreciate it as always. We've got into a bit of a tradition now for doing these pay-per-view events, minus UFC 289. Thank you for coming on. Any plugs or anything like that you'd like to give?
As we were kind of talking about before we started recording, I kind of all over the place a little bit at the moment. So I would say just follow me on Twitter at Kyle Dimond JOU, and you can see what I'm up to there because I don't know where I'm going to be next week at the moment. So that's Absolutely. Easier.
Brilliant. All right, then, go follow Kyle. I'll link his socials under the description. Thank you very much for watching, and I don't doubt we'll be back for UFC 291. Thank you for watching. Sweet.